The battle against global hunger and poverty is waged on many fronts. From the fields to the lab to the highest levels of government, ensuring adequate food for all mankind requires a broad approach. But the battle begins at the grassroots, through the impassioned engagement of ordinary citizens. In 2010, the World Food Prize honors two extraordinary individuals, David Beckmann and Joe Luck, for their leadership of two of the world's most effective non-governmental organizations tackling hunger and poverty. Described as a collective Christian voice urging decision-makers to end hunger at home and abroad, Bread for the World is the largest organization dedicated to building and supporting the political will to fight hunger. Behind Bread's success stands David Beckmann, a leading international advocate for the hungry and poor. Born into a religious family in Nebraska, a young David Beckmann was influenced by his parents' compassion for those less fortunate. He intended to become a pastor, but his plans changed when he left the relative calm of Nebraska and enrolled at Yale University during the turbulent late 1960s. There, Beckmann was exposed to new political ideas and to the plight of the world's hungry and disadvantaged.
All that political activism really made me want to figure out why were so many people poor in our country? Why were so many people poor around the world? Were there things that our country could do differently so there wouldn't be so much hunger and poverty?
After graduating in 1969, Beckmann received a fellowship to study religion in rural Ghana and saw firsthand the debilitating effects of hunger and poverty.
It gave me relationships with very, very poor people that changed the way I feel about the world.
Armed with this new perspective, Beckmann spent a year back home in Nebraska meeting with his fellow citizens. Those conversations led him to the conclusion that apathy toward the poor and destitute was at root a spiritual problem. Thus, he decided to attend Concordia Seminary and was later ordained a minister and missionary economist.
In order to deal with hunger and poverty in the U.S. and around the world, it's clear we've got to change big systems, so there has to be political change. But those political changes need to be rooted in spiritual transformation.
After receiving his master's from the London School of Economics in 1975, he spent a year working in the remote villages of Bangladesh before being offered a position as an economist at the World Bank. It was a position he would hold for 15 years, working on poverty reduction programs and leading the World Bank's efforts to engage with non-governmental organizations. While at the bank, Beckmann also became involved with Bread for the World, a role that expanded when the organization's founder stepped aside as president.
Then when the founder of Bread for the World, Arthur Simon, decided to retire from being president, I thought, this is the job that God made me for.
Beckmann assumed leadership of Bread for the World in 1991 and took up the organization's charge of fighting hunger and poverty through political engagement and advocacy.
The binding constraint on progress against hunger is lack of political will. Creating that political will, that give a damn, to get governments, especially the U.S. government, to care and to do the things that we know can help is the most crucial thing that we can do to overcome hunger.
In working to build that will, Beckmann expanded Bread for the World's membership by more than 60% in a decade. Through the more than 5,000 local church congregations and 50 national denominations that are counted as members, more than 1 million Christians have become actively engaged in Bread for the World's mission to end hunger. Each year, Beckmann marshals 250,000 constituent contacts with elected officials through letters, emails, and meetings. One of Bread's most effective tools is the annual Offering of Letters campaign, in which Bread for the World members are encouraged to send handwritten letters to members of Congress in support of anti-hunger and poverty legislation. Through this campaign and Bread for the World's annual Lobby Day, its members have been able to generate the political will to pass significant reforms, bringing millions out of hunger and poverty. Thanks to the influence of BREAD members, over the past decade, Congress has tripled poverty-focused development assistance. U.S. domestic assistance has doubled, aid to Africa has quadrupled, and funding for agriculture and rural infrastructure has increased eightfold. Bread for the World has also pushed for broad reforms to U.S. foreign assistance and played a leadership role in encouraging debt relief for developing countries.
So we just see over and over again that ordinary people across the country who care and get active, just a little bit active in pushing their members of Congress, can make a difference.
As David Beckmann and his army of citizen advocates work to change the politics of hunger, aid programs carry on the battle on another, more direct front. Among the leaders in this field is Heifer International, led by the energetic Joe Luck. Founded in 1944, Heifer International provides livestock to poor families around the world and supplies them with the necessary training to care for the animals, grow crops sustainably, develop their communities, and lift themselves out of poverty. The global scope and impact of Heifer's work expanded greatly under Joe Luck, who took a rather indirect path to leading one of the world's premier hunger-fighting nonprofit organizations. Born in 1941 in Little Rock, Arkansas, Joe Luck had her first international experience at the age of 4. After her father was drafted to fight in World War II, she and her mother joined other military dependents on the first ship of U.S. families to Japan, where she was exposed to harsh post-war living conditions. After returning to the United States a year later, Joe Luck's parents divorced, and she spent her childhood moving from place to place, attending 6 different schools in 7 years. She studied education at Hendrix College, and her early teaching career provided lessons that she would apply later in life.
Once I entered the global scene in a career way, I was already aware of the importance of diversity and the important issues of justice and how sometimes women were marginalized.
In 1978, she was hired to become the first director of the Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. A year later, she was appointed to Governor Bill Clinton's cabinet as the Director of Parks and Tourism, where she doubled Arkansas's tourism industry by focusing on the state's natural beauty and ecological resources. She continued to teach adults at night and gave an assignment that was particularly popular with her students.
One of my requirements was that they wouldn't just tell me where they were going to be in 5 years, they would picture it, sketch it, or I brought boxes full of magazines, cut the pictures out, show us what it's going to look like.
One evening, the students turned the tables and asked Joe Luck to do the same.
So I walked over to the flip chart, picked up a marker, and began to sketch, and drew women and children in a circle and some little chickens and a baby, and they said, "Where is that?" I said, "I don't know, but I want to be there."
The opportunity would come sooner than she expected.
So about 2 weeks later, the headhunter from D.C. called me and he said, "I have a job called Director of Global Services at Heifer International, and this person will work all over the world to end hunger and poverty, and you've been highly recommended." And I said, "I have?"
She was hired for the position and began traveling to remote parts of the world. She quickly saw that although women were doing most of the agricultural work, it was men who were receiving Heifer's technical training. So she pursued a major initiative to train and empower women. She also learned that the most effective communication came from sitting in a circle, just like the one she had envisioned. In 1992, just 3 years after joining Heifer, she was promoted to CEO. Her challenge to the organization to identify and focus on its strengths resulted in Heifer's successful management model aimed at empowering its recipients. She was also able to turn around the organization's financial misfortunes by investing heavily in outreach and establishing Heifer's wildly successful gift catalog.
Heifer was able to grow from $7 million to $130 million between 1992 and 2008. And that we actually grew from just under 20,000 donors and supporters to over 500,000 in that same short time frame. And that means we're connecting people in the grassroots of America with people around the world.
With this success, Heifer was able to greatly expand its impact throughout Africa, the Americas, Asia and the South Pacific, and Central and Eastern Europe. Under Joe Luck's leadership, Heifer also expanded its training programs and set a focus on providing families with the proper animals for their individual needs.
We now work with 30 species around the world. It's important that it's appropriate to the environment, the available resources, what works for that culture. So it's everything from silkworms and rabbits and alpaca and llama and pigs and chickens and camels and water buffalo.
At the heart of Heifer's success is the concept of passing on the gift, in which recipients pass on their animal's first female offspring, along with the requisite training, to another family in need, enabling Heifer participants to become not only recipients, but donors as well.
The beautiful thing is, when one hands that offspring to the next, they're giving away half of their wealth.
Through teaching poor communities to become self-sustaining, Joe Luck and Heifer International have educated and advocated on behalf of the hungry and poor. The results have been far-reaching, with Heifer having assisted over 10 million families in 120 countries since its inception. Aiming to build a stronger connection between Heifer's supporters and its recipients, Joe Luck has also established learning centers in the United States to give visitors a chance to experience the challenges of global hunger and poverty, and to learn how their life choices can affect the impoverished around the world. Both Joe Luck and David Beckmann have engaged thousands upon thousands of everyday people in the fight against hunger. And though they have chosen different methods for this daunting battle, both leaders share a sense of hope for the future.
The world has made dramatic progress against hunger, poverty, and disease over the last 30 years. We don't have to put up with 1 billion malnourished people in the world. I think we have good reason for optimism about being able to end mass hunger.
It can be changed. We don't want to just try to alleviate hunger, we want to end it.
And so, as the many ordinary citizens they've inspired continue the fight, the World Food Prize honors these two remarkable leaders, David Beckmann and Joe Luck, for building two of the world's foremost grassroots organizations, leading the charge to end hunger and poverty for millions of people around the globe.